Hello, 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 and welcome to the very first episode of the Knit, Knot, and Weave podcast. Today is June 8th, and my name is Dorothy. It is also my birthday, so happy birthday to me. And I will be talking all about my fiber love. I love knitting, I love crocheting, I love weaving, and I love dyeing yarn. I think I love dyeing yarn the most. That's a new one. Anyway, I have been crocheting for maybe 25, 30 years now. I have been knitting since 2006, so what's that, about 15, 16 years. I have been weaving with a rigid heddle loom for probably about 7 or 8 years now. And about 2 years ago, I managed to buy my very first floor loom, which I thoroughly enjoy, but I'm still very new at it. I was enthralled with weaving since I was probably in 2nd grade, and we took a trip to one of those colonial places where, you know, they're all dressed in garb and they show you how things were done back then, you know, the dipping of the candles to make the candle wax to make the candles. And there happened to be somebody who was weaving on one of the looms, and it just fascinated me. And it fascinated me so much that it has been on my mind since I was in 2nd grade, but I didn't think it would happen anytime because I found out floor looms were extremely expensive. So I thought I would never learn to weave. And then somebody introduced me to the rigid heddle loom, and that was it. I had a field day learning how to weave on a rigid heddle loom. My very first loom was a 32-inch loom, so I was able to make wider shawls and baby blankets and scarves. And then I went down and I found a 16-inch one that somebody was selling on, I think it was Craigslist, for $50. Sold! So I got the 16-inch one, and then Ashford came out with a 10-inch sampler that I really wanted to get because I enjoy knitting, I enjoy weaving scarves, and I thought the 10-inch would be a little bit more portable so I could bring it to knit nights and things like that. And let's see, I am also the organizer for a knitting group. Really should call it a yarny crafting group because we have knitters, we have crocheters, we have one person who tats, and she does amazing work. That group was started by a friend of mine, Lynn, back in October of 2006. She was not my friend back then, but she became my friend then. So she started the group, Columbia Sip and Knit, in October of 2006. I managed to find the meetup in December of 2006, and I've been going ever since. A number of years ago, she started a new journey doing knitting behind bars. If you are a knitter, you may have heard of her. Lynn Swirling. She started knitting behind bars here in Maryland. Her and a friend of ours, really, Sheila. And it became, I don't know if it became too much for her to do both, but she started to focus more on the knitting behind bars, and she turned the torch over to me for the knitting group. She still attends, and we love having her. And that is how the group got started. We have 4 different groups that meet. We have a Tuesday morning, a Wednesday evening, a Friday afternoon, and a Saturday morning. I go to 2 of those groups because I'm still working, so I can't really do the Tuesday morning or the Friday afternoon. What else can I tell you about me? I don't know. I will share some items. My mom was cleaning out and she found some things that she had knit that were mine. I'm sorry, not knit, crochet. Sorry, Mom, if you're watching this. So the first thing she found was a dress that she made me when I was, I guess I would say probably 2 or 3 years old. Little light blue dress, all done in motif style. You could see all the little crocheted flowers were done in squares, and then she put them together. And she made these amazing pom-pom ties. See, Ellen? See how fluffy the pom-pom is? Hi, Ellen, I love you. So that was an item that my mom made me. Another thing she had made when I was a baby was a blanket. She crocheted a flower motif blanket for me. And you can see if we get closer here that they were all done in squares. And then once I was a little bit older, she took it apart and she turned it into a shawl for me. So I was probably the only little girl in school that wore a shawl. I do have some thread crochet items that my nonna had done. And for those of you that don't know, nonna is the Italian term for grandmother, and that's what we called her, nonna. She did amazing, amazing work with thread crochet. She passed away a number of years ago at 94, but at 94 she was still crocheting away. She did thread crochet. My mom has 2 beautiful pieces that she's done. She did a beautiful tablecloth and a beautiful bedspread, but in thread crochet. I never saw her read a pattern. She just did it. She also did crochet edging, and she made a different, I don't even know how to explain it. She did crochet edging, and she did a different pattern for each one of her grandchildren. And she had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 grandchildren. And she would do a good length of crochet edging that when we got married, our mothers were asked us what color we wanted a set of bed sheets, and they would put that edging across the top sheet and then around each of the pillows. And so she made, and each one of them was different. I don't know if she created them. I don't know if these were patterns that she learned back in Italy, but she never had a pattern. She just did it. She was amazing. And I miss her very, very much. But my zia, which is an Italian term for aunt, my zia, when she was going through her stuff, she managed to find some items that my nonna had done with thread crochet, and she gave them to me because I'm the only grandchild that has taken up the art of crochet and knit. And I will share those with you in a later episode. But for now, we're going to move on to my things. So I'm going to start, I think, with finished objects. And since this is my very first episode, I have a few knitted objects to share. And I guess I'll start with my socks. I was not known to be a sock knitter in my group. I had knit a couple of socks and I got the hang of it, but then one day somebody told me that the amount of stitches that are in a sock are the amount of stitches that are in a sweater. And I thought, well, if I'm putting the same amount of work in, maybe I should be knitting sweaters, because, you know, socks nobody really sees under my jeans. And then my my friends, I use that term loosely, Ellen, Andy, Georgie, are you out there? Joan? No, I don't think Joan did anything with the socks. But anyway, they used to make fun of me because I didn't like socks. They would say, you don't like socks. I do like socks. I don't see the point. But then I started knitting socks again because I realized it had been 8 years since I had knit a sock. And I have knit a lot of socks now. So I'll start with a few. And I do have, I only have one of the pairs on a sock blocker so you can see them. So here's one I tried out. I will say I do enjoy knitting toe up, 2 at a time. So this was one that I did. As you could see, I also started playing with different colors for heels, toes, and cuffs. But I am definitely a toe up girl. I like a rounded toe. I do the fish lips kiss heel. And actually, I have just learned about the double shadow wrap heel that I like a little bit better. It is very much like the fish lips kiss heel, but a little bit better. Gives me a little bit more room in the toe. But here's one. And here's another. I made just a little shorty. This wasn't a pattern that I followed. I tend to knit more so just straight stockinette stitches, plain vanilla socks, but sometimes I will just start a pattern, you know, just a 4-stitch repeat or something, and that's what I did here. So this was not a pattern that was written out or anything like that. It's just something I came up with. And then here's another plain vanilla sock. This was one of the yarns that I hand dyed. So it's sort of a purple base with some sprinkles of colors all throughout. Now this yarn, I took a dyeing class, oh gosh, maybe 8 years ago at a local yarn shop. It's called Lovely Yarns. It's in Baltimore, Maryland. It's still there. It's under new ownership. But Sue was the owner when I did it, and I took my very first dyeing class with her. And I have had this yarn in my stash since I took that class. So I finally knit socks with this. And again, I made them into a pair of shorties. These were the Hermione's socks, everyday socks or something like that. And again, I did them toe up. Rounded toe, fish lips kiss heel. I got very bored with the pattern and I turned them into shorty socks. And then there's another plain vanilla sock that I did. Again, this is the main color here is yarn that I dyed, but the cuffs, toes, and heels are hedgehog fiber minis. And then this is another one of my hand-dyed yarns. Again, toe up, fish lips kiss heel. And just to prove I don't have second sock syndrome, here are the other socks. Oh, let me show you this. I decided to have some fun with my socks. So here's one. And here's the other one. You could see I mixed up the toes and the cuffs on this one. I had fun with that. So those are all socks that I've knit since March. I think that's when the sock bug started to bite me again. I have a couple of other knitted items here and a couple of woven scarves. Here's a hat that I made. I probably should put it on, but again, this is another one of these things where it's going to look funny because I have my, and if you can really see the pattern all that well, but it's just one I always seem to have sock yarn lately, but I've always seemed to have a skein or two wound up, and when I finish something but I need to keep my hands going, or if I'm in the middle of watching something and I don't feel like getting up and finding a whole new, or wounding up a whole new something to start, I'll just grab a ball and start with knitting a hat. And I just sort of come up with some of my own pattern ideas when I do that. Do you guys ever do that? Am I the only one? I can't be the only one. Am I? No, I can't be. I've been on a kick lately to find mohair, to play with mohair. So here is a hat. Here's another hat that I made, and I held a skein of mohair with it, and unfortunately I ran out, so I had to ensconce a little bit of a white mohair. But again, this is another one that I got bored with. Not that I got bored with knitting. I was just doing something and I was bored and I needed to keep my hands busy. So I would grab some yarn and I would just start casting on for a hat. I did a lot of hat knitting during COVID season because, you know, it's great. You're on Zoom, you're in meetings, you're bored out of your mind, and they can't see your hands down here. So your hands are going, and I cranked out a lot of hats. But anyway, here's another one, mostly stockinette, but then I wanted to put in a little bit of a detail so you can kind of see this little zigzag that I did in garter stitch, so it would stand out, and you could see it a little, there we go. You'd see it a little bit better as you get close, as I get closer. I don't have these patterns written up. Maybe I will write them up one day, but I just sort of get started. And here's another one. I just sort of put a little cable pattern, so when you put it on, you can sort of put the cable to the side. It's a little bit of a slouchy hat. Unfortunately, I have a huge clip in my hair holding my hair back because it is hot around here lately. Gosh, I haven't talked this much in so long. That's just water. Maybe in other episodes I'll have wine or beer or something, but right now that's just water. Here is a cowl I made. It's the honeycomb cowl. And again, it is with a yarn that I dyed. A beautiful peachy, maybe more salmony color with little pops of colors in between. Been wanting to do the honeycomb cowl for a while, so I finally did that. And then I was dyeing some yarn. I was testing out some new colors that I had, and so I would, you know, get a skein of yarn and put it in my pan, and I would just, I don't know how many of you have ever watched Chem Knits, but I picked up this trick from her. So Rebecca is the person who does the Chem Knits videos. She would put a skein of yarn in her pan, and whenever she had new dyes, she would, you know, sprinkle a little bit of each color around the skein so that she can get an idea of what the colors looked like. So I did the same thing. And then, you know, once you get the colors on, you take a picture so that you can have that for your own reference later on. And then you just sort of have fun with the dyes in the pan to make a usable skein. And so this is what I dyed. And believe it or not, it was my oranges that I was testing out. And somehow it turned a brownish burgundy. I don't know if you can really, yeah, you can see the different colors that come up in there. So it's definitely a skein that you sort of have to be outside in the sun to really see all the different colors, but this is actually picking it up pretty well. I'm impressed. Okay. So I just cast it on and did a broken rib for it. And I casted it on so that it could be kind of a loose fitting garment. I don't know if you could see it. So I don't like things too tight on my neck, but you know, if I need to warm up, I can always do that and put a little brooch here. But I really enjoyed knitting that one. It was a broken rib. I think I probably cast it on about 120 stitches. Probably the German twisted cast on, because I love that as a stretchy cast on, and probably Jenny's stretchy bind off. Those are the two I tend to use when I do cowls because I just like them. Oh, mitts. Did make a pair of mitts, fingerless mitts. This was yarn that was left over from the first hat I showed you guys. As you could see, I made a little bit of a set. I think I made the thumb a little bit too long on this one, but I can always roll it down, and if I get cold, I'll just roll it up and hide my thumb. I don't know what I was thinking. And there's the other one. Oh, you're probably wondering why I'm wearing this. Well, I have trigger finger. Who knew? I was not shooting a gun when I had trigger finger. But I got trigger finger in my ring finger on my right hand. And this seems to help it a lot. I've had trigger finger for about 6 weeks now. I keep trying to massage it and stretch it and hoping it'll go away on its own, because I really don't want to go to the doctor and get a cortisone shot. So I probably really should stop knitting for a while, but yeah, that's not going to happen. That's my stress relief, especially now with COVID coming to an end, school starting back up. But anyway, so that's what happened to my hand. I have a brace that I wear on my finger at night so that I keep it straight and I don't bend it so it doesn't lock up on me, because it is not fun when that finger gets locked up. Okay, now I'm going to show you guys some of my woven scarves. Here's one. It's about 10 inches wide. Ooh, looks way more green on camera than it really is. Let me see, does it? No. I don't know. But it is not that bright of green in real life. I still have to do something with the fringes. But this was a simple weave. It was all the same color yarn. I think I warped up probably about 8 feet, 7 feet. I'm trying to think of my size of my table is 6 feet. 6 feet. 8 feet. 8 feet. I have an 8-foot table in my basement. So I warped up about 8 feet. And so warping is when you put your threads on the loom, and then when it rolls up, so you're actually, these are your long your long threads that go this way in the garment. And then these are part of the warp threads at the end. And then your weft yarn is the yarn that you actually go back and forth with when you're weaving. So this was all done in the same color yarn, both warp and weft, as we say. Now this one, I played around with what is called inlay. You'll see this is also a yarn that I had hand dyed. Now the silver thread in it, I obviously did not dye because it's silver and sparkly. But to sort of give it some continuity, I did put some silver in the warp. But then I did a free form with the threads as I was weaving it up. And I just did some back and forths just to put a little design in the scarf, trying out new techniques. This was a lot of fun. You can't really, when you're weaving, you can only see a small portion of it when you're doing something like this, like with the inlays. So you kind of have to think about your weaving in sections. And so you want to do a design for that section, and then you move it forward, and it rolls in on itself, so you can't really see what you've done to remember. But freeform is a lot of fun. It's similar to sari weaving, which is where, you just knit whatever. Sorry, I always use that term, knit. Weave, weave, weave. Now this next one, I had some yarn leftovers that were in Halloween colors, so I decided to make myself a Halloween scarf. I know, it's a little early, but I couldn't resist. So my warp thread, as you could see, it was mostly this black and white that I had. They were 3 little mini skeins that I had picked up from AC Moore a while ago. And then I had some Dream in Color Classic. They're worsted in this purple and this green, so I added that into the warp threads. And then for the weft, I used black. You can see, I used black, and then I embedded some of this fluffy yarn here, this fuzzy fluffy yarn. And then I went to purple, and I broke up each color with some of this black fuzzy yarn. You could see. Then I went into an orange, which sort of took over, and then a little green, and then I went back to the black, and so I did that all the way down. So this, once it's done, again, weaving also needs to get wet blocked, especially more so when you're weaving with natural fibers and cotton, because what it does is when you wet block it, it sort of locks in the fibers into the nice squares, and then you can just trim all your little edges. And then for cotton, the cotton, it just sort of fluffs it up and makes it a little bit larger and tightens everything up very nicely. And then I will probably twist the fringe at the end. And then my next one was my very first try at houndstooth weaving. So you can see all the little cross sections. So what houndstooth is when you look at the warp threads, again, the threads that you use to set up the loom, it's a 2x2. So I warped up 2 reds and then 2 whites, and then 2 reds, and then 2 whites all the way across. And then with my shuttle, when I'm weaving it, I'm doing the same thing. I'm weaving 2 shots of white, and then 2 shots of red, and then 2 shots of white, and then 2 shots of red. And that's what makes the little, kind of like the little checkerboard pattern. And again, these still need to be wet blocked, and the ends, the fringe needs to be either trimmed or twisted. I haven't decided, but when I get that done, I will show you guys very quickly what that looks like. So those are my works in progresses. Those are not my works in progresses. Those are my finished objects. Please excuse me, this is my first time doing this. Now we will go on to my works in progresses. So, oh my goodness. In my little Hocus Pocus bag here from, I think it's Lily Styles. I'll put it in the show notes. I have the Oktoberfest hat. This is one that I've been bringing to school with me, and I would knit during my lunch break just because I needed a little relaxer. I don't know if any of you can really see these needles, but I discovered these when I was at a Vogue Knitting Live class that I was taking on their virtual Vogue Knitting Live. These are the Addy Rockets squared. So they are actually square needles. And I was hoping that maybe that would help with my trigger finger, because they say that the round ones can be a little cumbersome, but really hasn't helped my trigger finger, but they're nice to knit with. I will give them that. So now the yarn was something I had in my stash. I don't remember what it was because I didn't have the band. The ball band fell off, but it's definitely a wool. I don't know if it's merino. There might be a little silk in here too. But that's the color. It's a pretty rubyish kind of color. So that's a hat. I'm also working on, I'm doing two, one knit along, one crochet along. I'm doing the Christy Glass Knit and Escape knit along for the Ziggy Interrupted. And I started on my first panel here. And I went with, instead of the pattern calls for 5 full skeins of yarn, but instead we are using minis. So we are using 29 skeins of minis. 28 skeins will be in the scarf, and the last one will be the trim that will go all the way around the scarf. So I've decided that as I knit my little motifs, I was going to crochet them together because one, I think it looks nicer. You can see that the sort of multicolor it makes because you're pulling the yarn through as you crochet it. I almost said knit again. And so once you're done with these motifs, then there are sections of chevron, which I will use 7 colors, and then I'll move on to the next set of motifs, which will be a new set of 7 colors. And to try and keep everything cohesive in a way, I will borrow a couple of colors from the next motif to put in these little squares, And so these little squares are what's going to help bring all the different colors together. So again, that is my Ziggy Interrupted. I'm just starting it. So this is only the first motif. And then the other knit along that I'm doing is the Fiber Hustle. I'm doing a Vertices United. This is my third Vertices United. The first one I did it with a whole bunch of scrap yarns. You could see it on my Ravelry page. And the second one I again did in Halloween colors. Love that one. And then this one I'm just getting started. So the multicolor yarn, this blue-green yarn in here is Dragonfly Pixie. It was a Maryland sheep and wool colorway a couple of years ago. And then the darker stripes is a personal something that I dyed. It's a very, very dark purple. I know it looks black, but it's a very, very dark purple. It'll look better in the sunlight, I hope. So I'm just on the first section. It's just such a mindless knit. I love garter stitch. It's so squishy and soft, and you can just go and go and go, and I like it. And that is in my naughty knitting sack, and it's literally a sack. And the best part, I have to show you, is the fornicating skeleton material inside. I think that's hysterical. You would never know by looking at the outside of the bag. Again, that's naughty knitting sacks. She's on Etsy. Go check her out. All of her bags, most of her bags have, a very nice, polite outside, but the inside is where the woo-hoo-hoo naughty is. Okay, and then I have here from Toad Hollow. I love this bag. We are the granddaughters of the witches you didn't burn. And in here I have all my socks. Yes, I'm knitting more socks. So I've been playing around. Since I haven't knit socks, like I said, in 8 years. This darn curl is going to drive me nuts. I've forgotten what size needles. So I've been sort of playing around. I've knit a couple on size 1s, and then somebody told me if you could go down needle sizes, it makes the sock more firmer and it'll last longer, and you won't. One of the reasons why I stopped knitting socks 8 years ago is because when I wore them, I felt like I could feel every stitch on the bottom of my foot. And so someone told me that if I knit on smaller needles, if I make the fabric a bit tighter, I wouldn't get that feeling. So I've been playing around with different size needles to see what would happen. And I have a couple in here. So here's a pair I had to, I think these are on size 0s. My first pair of self-striping socks. This yarn has a bit of cashmere in it. And it is, nope, that's the pattern. Red Phoenix yarn. It's an 80-10-10, and the colorway is Vladimir. I bought this off of Etsy a number of years ago. I don't even know if this person is still dying. But I knit these, and these were a little bit too tight. So unfortunately, I had to take them out. I took them out down to the heel because this portion fit me just fine. It fit my foot perfectly. But I needed more room across my instep up here, so I took it out to the heel. And then this, I did the, as you can see, it looks very similar to the Fish Lips Kiss heel, but this is actually the shadow wrap heel. The shadow wrap heel. And then I added a couple of extra stitches across here to give me some more room on my instep across my arch. So hopefully these will fit me when they're done. Now the next pair I have, yes, I have 4 pairs of socks on the needles right now. Here's the next pair I have on. And again, it's self-striping. I did use, because this yarn has some cashmere in it, I did use a solid black in a 75-25 so that I have a little bit more strength in the toes, and I'll also use it on the heels. And this is, what yarn is this? Do I have the band in here? No, of course I don't have the band in here. Do I have the band in here? No, of course I don't have the band in here. Why don't I have the band in here? String Theory. I cannot tell you what colorway it is, but this is String Theory. And these are on a size 0. And so far I'm liking the material it's making. This is another one of my dyed yarns. I was just sort of playing around with different coloring. So this is not something that I wrote down to repeat, but I probably could figure it out. But you know, when you're just starting out, you're just having fun. Now these are on a pair of signature needles. I do like my signature needles as well. I think they're a 0. So that's my 3rd pair. And this is my 4th pair. And again, this is another skein of String Theory. And another one that's a cashmere blend, the 80-10-10 merino cashmere nylon. So I did the same thing with these. I used a black 75-25 for the toes, and I'll also use it for the heels. And again, when I knit 2 socks at a time, I knit from 1 skein of yarn. I just take from the inside and the outside. It doesn't really bother me that they're not going to match absolutely perfectly, but you know, if I had thought about it, I could have pulled out and sort of done them at the same. They'd look the same. You'd never know that I went from the outside and from the inside. But that's how I knit my socks. I know some people don't like to knit from both ends of the balls. I don't know why. It doesn't bother me. I don't like breaking up the skein into 250-gram skeins because I feel like I don't use the whole skein of yarn for a pair of socks. So why would I want 2 balls of leftover instead of 1? And then, you know, it's pretty substantial. I could make probably a pair of shorties out of them, or anyway, that's just me. But you know, you do you and I do me. So those are my 4 socks that I currently have on the needles. I know for someone who hasn't knit socks in 8 years, I've managed to finish 6, and I have 4 more on the needles. I'm telling you, Ellen, you made a monster. That's your fault, Ellen. It's your fault. And the last thing I'm going to share with you guys is a sweater. It's a cardigan that I've been working on for a while. It is the Portage. And this is yarn that I acquired from a friend. This is a very, very dear friend of mine that unfortunately passed away a number of years ago. And she was a phenomenal knitter. And she owned a yarn store. No, she didn't. But she could have. Her stash was a yarn store. And when she passed, we helped her husband, and we had a large sale. We had it in his apartment complex, and she had so much yarn. It was just unbelievable. If one of these days, if I ever figure out how to edit, I might stick in one of the little clips that I still have from the yarn sale that we did for her husband. But anyway, this was an orange yarn. She was very much into orange, and orange is just not me. So I had over dyed it with some red. There's still some orange that comes through, but where's my other sleeve? There it is. So I have the body of the sweater completed. I love the stitching of the back. I think that pattern is just so beautiful. And I have the shawl collar finished. Now I just need to go back and forth and put in the pockets and then obviously the sleeves. And I'm really, really hoping that I have enough yarn to finish this. Otherwise, it might be a short sleeve cardigan. Because, of course, you know, my wonderful friend, God rest her soul, would skein up a lot of her yarn, and then she may have known what it was, but we didn't always know what it was. But this is definitely I think it's a merino cashmere blend. I do also have a couple of blankets on the hooks that I did not bring up to share. One I cannot share because it's going to be a gift for somebody, and if they ever watch this, I might share it. They may not know. Who knows? Excuse me. Need to freshen up. So, let's move on to Stashquisitions. Is that a word? Stashquisitions? Acquisitions that are going to go in your stash? Or, you know, the benefits of sex, maybe? You know, stash enhancing expedition. So I have been, one of the podcasts that I have been watching for a while now is called Fiber Love Diaries, and Trish does Fiber Love Diaries, and she has been doing a breed study. Now she is a spinner. I am not. I attempted to learn how to spin, and my friend Sheila was trying to teach me. She was trying to teach me how to do the V, to spread the roving or the whatever you call it before you can spin. So she'd given me a drop spindle and some roving, and she told me to go home and practice. Well, I went home, or I came home, and I attempted to practice. And at the time I had a kitty, and he was older, 12, 13, 14 years old, but he still thought he was a kitten. I mean, he zoomed around this house. So anyway, I brought out the drop spindle and, you know, attempted to learn how to do my V. But as soon as I dropped it and spun it, here came Frisco. Zoom! Oh, look! Mommy has a new toy. Yeah. Thank you, Frisco, for saving me from another hobby. In the bag it went. But anyway, Trish from Fiber Love's Diary has been doing a breed study, and she has been spinning up different types of roving that she got from different sheeps and stuff. And I'm not a dyer. I am not a spinner, but I really became interested in trying to use new fibers. So I've been on a hunt. I've been on a hunt with Etsy. I was on the hunt when I did some of the Vogue Live knitting, the virtual shows that they've been doing. And this curl is driving me nuts. Curly hair can be such a pain sometimes. Anyway, and then through the Vogue Knitting Live, blah, 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 I went to some vendors and they were talking about different breeds of sheep and different yarns that they get from the breeds of sheep. So I started searching around, searching Ravelry, searching Etsy to find some of the breeds that I've been hearing about. And so the first thing I found was this fingering sock, and it's from Turtle Valley Yarns. It's in Michigan, and it's from Gotland Sheep. So it's a 2-ply sock yarn. It's 81% Gotland wool and 19% nylon and 410 yards. It's in its natural color. It feels a little stiff right now, but I am told Gotland yarn makes fabulous socks. So I did buy 2 skeins of this. One, I think this is a light gray. I may attempt to dye and see what it does. It still feels like it's got a nice coating of lanolin on it. I'm hoping that maybe it'll soften up some as I knit with it. But once again, Turtle Valley Farms. I found it on Etsy. And so that is Gotland wool. Another one that I came across that I decided to try, this was, I think this came from Sweden. It was from Etsy. It's Anita Yarns. It's called Driftwood. It's 67%. Yes, this came from Sweden because I don't know that word. But it's 67% something lamb's wool, and then 22% Swedish fine wool, 7% Angora wool, and 4% Helsing wool. This is a sport weight yarn, 300 meters, 100 grams, so probably about 320 yards. This one feels a little bit softer than the Gotland. You can see the color difference. This is more of a browner sheep. Again, this also feels like it's got some nice lanolin in it. So I think this will knit up very nicely. What else do I have that I've tried? Not tried, that I'm trying. Here is, oh, Rambouillet wool. And this is from Lannis Lana. I believe this came from one of the vendors from one of the Vogue Knitting Lives that I did. And I bought natural so that I could dye it. And it feels very nice. It has a very nice twist to it. So I think these will make a fabulous pair of socks. I know, right? I haven't knit socks in 8 years, and here I am talking all about socks. Ellen, what did you do to me? Anyway. I love you, Ellen. So this is Rambouillet. I did buy 2 other skeins of Rambouillet. Nope, that's not it. I did not. I bought 2 skeins of Tarhi wool. Or Tarhi? Can somebody tell me how to pronounce that correctly? Anyway, it's 90% superwash Tarhi wool and 10% nylon. And it is from Crafty Jack's Boutique. This colorway is called Disco Party. So a nice gray with speckles. And then the other one I bought, it just, these colors. Shifting Seasons. Look at those colors. Just beautiful. And again, another one from Crafty Jack's Boutique. These were also purchased through a vendor that was at the Vogue Knitting Live virtual. And then 2 other ones that I found on Etsy. This one is Mad Fuzzy. And the colors are just stunning. Again, it's that fall-y color. Now this was made with 80% East Frisian wool and 20% Starfire nylon. I don't know anything about this wool, but I am guessing the Starfire nylon, I don't know if you can see it. It's little flecks of gold. It's got like a little sparkle to it. You can't really see it. Oh well. But again, this is Mad Fuzzy. And she is on Instagram. But these colors are just gorgeous. Look at that. Orange and burgundy and purples. Just stunning. And then the other one I got to try was Jacob's wool. I have seen a lot of Jacob's sheep at the Maryland Sheep and Wool Festival. But this is the first time I've managed to find some Jacob's sheep that was, I don't think she hand spun it. Maybe she did. I don't remember. Jacob Fleece Farms. And again, this was on Etsy. And I figure this might make a nice hat. It is, I think it's a sport weight. But it's 100% Jacob's wool. It's a pretty grayish brown color. So maybe that'll make a nice hat. And then other Stash acquisitions that I have. One, this is Fiber Stash Dye Works. Again, she was a vendor at Vogue Knitting Live Virtual. And she did a dyeing demonstration, which was a lot of fun to watch. But this one was called Bye Pheelya. I just couldn't resist. I have a cousin named Pheelya too, so I just, I couldn't resist. And then I bought Trilogy Yarns. I bought 2 skeins from Trilogy Yarns, and I bought them purely for their color names. I mean, they're gorgeous yarns, don't get me wrong, but the color names were just, they gave me a giggle. I mean, come on, look at how pretty that is. And what does she call it? Unicorn farts. I mean, how do you come up with that? But it's beautiful. This will probably be a hat or a scarf or a shawl. I cannot speak tonight. A hat or a cowl, because I only bought 1 skein of DK. And then the other one I bought for the color, but I also bought for the name. These pretty, pretty colors. And this one is called Llamas in Drag. Come on. How could you not buy that color? Llamas in drag. And perfect for June, for Pride Month. But such pretty colors. So that is all I have for Stashquisitions. Stashquisitions. I can't even say it now. I feel like I'm just shopping. So now I just want to share with you some of the things that I've dyed. I had a lot of fun doing this. So I learned to dye yarn a number of years ago with my friend Sheila. She used to dye yarn. It was woolen studio fibers, and unfortunately she had to give it up. But she was the first one I got to see to dye yarn in front of me. And then I started watching, and then I found ChemKnits tutorials, or ChemKnits. I think maybe it's just ChemKnits now. ChemKnits on YouTube. And I started watching her because she was like the only YouTuber that had like dyeing videos out there. Because I wasn't finding any dyeing classes aside from the one I took at Lovely Yarns. But that was more of a one-time type deal for dyeing, because it was, you know, you put the yarn on a piece of plastic, and you dribble yarn, or you use a sponge. So it really wasn't something that was able to be, you were able to produce enough to sell, to put it that way. That was my interest. I always wanted to learn how to dye yarn to sell it. And then I discovered Neighborhood Fibers in Baltimore actually taught some dyeing classes. They taught an introductory one, and then they taught how to over dye some yarns. So I took both of those classes, and each one of those classes I didn't take, but a different friend took the class with me, and that's where I learned to dye. And I should have brought some of those skeins with me. Bugger, I didn't even think of that. Next time. So anyway, so over winter break, of course, we were still in the middle of the pandemic, and I was having a very hard time with it at the beginning. I live alone, so, you know, not being able to see people was very, very, very hard for me. It was even harder for me when I would go see my sister, who lives in the area, and my nieces, because I'm a big hugger, but I didn't want any, you know, hugging was off the table for a while. You know, lucky for me, I did have my sister in the area, and we sort of did, you know, a pod, whatever it was, you know, like I knew where I was going, and my sister was working from home. I knew where my nieces were, you know. So it was nice to be able to at least see some family during all this, but it was a very rough time for me, transitioning to teaching online, trying to do tech support online for teachers, for students, you know, not knowing how to see what they're seeing or help them. I was having a lot of trouble sleeping at night. I couldn't sleep. I went to the doctors, and he prescribed me medication, and it wasn't really working. So, you know, lack of sleep, and then you're working from home, so you're literally on the computer all day, and you're sitting all day. That's another thing that was very hard for me, because when I'm at work, I'm up and moving, I'm assisting kids, I'm shelving books, I'm, you know, running around the building helping people get this tech working or that tech working, along with, you know, working with our ITSS that's in the building. So over winter break, I unplugged from it all. I put a out of office notice on my email that said I was on winter break. I was not checking emails. I would get back to everybody when the school year restarted on January 2nd. I forced myself not to check emails because I really needed a break from it all. I had been going at it since March, and I needed to unplug. I really needed to get away from work, and I couldn't get away because everything was shut down, but I needed that separation. It was very tough for me to have work in my house where it's always been my little respite from work. So that's when I really started to play around and dyed a lot of yarn. And I have thoroughly enjoyed it so much that I did it all over again during spring break. And now I have all this yarn that I've dyed up. So at some point I will be putting it up on my Etsy shop. But for right now, I'll just share a few of them with you. Here is one. This is on a bulky weight. Blues with little hints of green here and there. It was fun learning how to do certain things. Like here's one. It's various shades of pink. And it was fun to learn how to pour in different styles so that you had more color one way and less color another. And this is on a Tweedy base, which is really very, very soft. 75-25 base, along with the little noops. They make very nice soft socks. And then here is one where I played around with speckling. I dyed it a peachy blush orange, and then I speckled with some fluorescence, like some fluorescent yellow and maybe fluorescent pink. And then I'm pretty sure that's radioactive, which is a fluorescent purple. Ooh, there's the fluorescent yellow you can see there. And this is actually what I used to make this, except this was a yak and silk base. So you can see different bases pick up colors in different ways. That was fun to see too. So yeah, so this was a yak and silk, but it was dyed in the same pan with this. And then here's one where I played around more so with speckling, but not really speckling, but using dry powders to make the colors. So it isn't the fine speckling from this one, but it was also done with a lot of dried powders and mixing and matching. Now, another technique that I did attempt, and I still need to work on it to perfect it, was pouring. I don't even know what this technique is called, but pouring different colors in and just seeing what comes out. So you would pour in a color and let it set, and then you might move your yarn around a little and pour in another color. So I played around with the primaries, of course. And this is one I did with a primary red, yellow, and blue. And you can see that the mixture made some greens, some purples. But this is a super dark type of tone to these colors. And then I went the other way, and I remembered my ink cartridges from school. And when you buy ink cartridges for a color printer, you're usually buying cyan, which is a bright blue, a magenta, and a yellow. So those were the colors that I used in this one. Unfortunately, I wasn't thinking, and I forgot to try and leave some of the yellow in it. But you can see blues, purples, a little bit of the pink, and the green. And again, this is also done on a tweedy yarn. So that is pretty much what I did over my breaks. I got lost in color play, and I had a lot of fun doing it. I did play around with speckling, and I did the rainbow. This is also on a bulky weight, but it's got some white patches coming through. And I thought that was kind of fun, and if I had gotten my act together, I could have put it on the Etsy shop to celebrate Pride Month. Anything else? I think that's it. I mean, it's not it. I have a whole lot of yarn here that I've dyed, but I think I'm done talking. It is the witching hour. So I need to say goodnight and crawl into bed and start a whole new day tomorrow. So I leave you now. As I said, it is the witching hour. So ciao, ciao. If you enjoyed this podcast, please give it a like and hit the subscribe button down below, and then hit the bell and ask for notifications, and you'll be notified when my next video comes up. I am actually heading out on an adventure tomorrow. My friend Ellen and I, yes, the Ellen that I make fun of during this podcast, are heading to Nevada, and we are picking up her daughter Mel, and we are driving back cross country. So that should be fun. We tend to joke a lot and laugh a lot, so we'll see what happens. Maybe I'll do a little vlogging on this trip, show you the different yarn shops that we go to and the different spots that we stop at. So we'll see if I can get them on camera as well. Anyway, thank you so much if you're still here. I didn't realize I would be going on and on like this for as long as I have, but I really appreciate you watching till now. And I hope I will see you in my next episode. Ciao, ciao. I will be your host. I don't know why I just did that. Anyway, so. Oh my God, 2 minutes and I can't even do this. Battery is too low. I cannot believe this. I cannot believe this. I hate when I say oh. I'm hoping. Why do I keep saying that? Oh my God. I can't believe I did. I hate when I say Let's see. I really don't like this. Okay, we'll be talking about, I don't know. I hate this. Welcome to the very first episode of the Knit, Knot, and Weave podcast. Talk all about my, well, I'm hoping. Why do I keep saying that?